I used to think I was born just to be the background for someone else's spotlight. Every year my sister's birthday was a grand celebration, while mine, if it happened at all, was a tiny cake and a few half-hearted wishes. Once, I asked my mother why the Barbie doll I had longed for was in my sister's gift box. She just shrugged. "Your sister behaves better, she deserves more." By the time I was 10, I understood. In my family, love was something given on conditions. And those conditions were ones I would never meet. My name is Morgan Davis. I'm 28 years old, living in Flagstaff, Arizona, where winters are covered in snow, but my childhood carried no real warmth. We were a middle-class family, not rich, but never lacking. The problem wasn't money. It was how they chose who to love. My sister Lauren is 4 years older. From the start she was the little angel, blonde hair, blue eyes, played the violin, always knowing how to say the right thing. Whenever guests came over, Mom would call Lauren down first, proudly boasting about her awards and achievements. I would stand halfway down the stairs, flour still on my hands from doing the dishes, silently listening to praise that was never meant for me. When I was in 3rd grade, I was elected class representative. I ran home, excited to tell my mom. She asked one question. "What about Lauren? Did she win a scholarship this year?" I didn't answer. I just nodded and walked quietly back to my room. I learned to be silent early on. Not because I had nothing to say, but because it didn't matter. No one was listening. At 16, I started working part-time at a small bookstore on Aspen Street. My shifts ran from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. after school. I never asked my parents for money, not out of pride, but because I knew exactly what they would say. "Lauren needs more, she's attending private university. Morgan, you need to learn to be independent." So, I learned independence, the way they wanted me to. But the cost was building everything from scratch myself. Textbooks, a laptop, even my first prom dress, which I found on clearance at the end of winter. Meanwhile, Lauren got a brand new Subaru for her 17th birthday. I remember it clearly. The whole family gathered outside, the lights blazing like an award ceremony. I stood on the porch with a broom in my hand, watching my father hand over the keys amid cheers. No one noticed me. No one asked what I might have wanted. One Christmas Eve, I overheard my mother talking to my aunt on the phone. "Morgan is fine, but Lauren is the real hope of this family." I was 17. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely invisible. Lauren went on to Columbia University. My parents didn't hesitate to take out loans so she could live in luxury dorms, join prestigious clubs, and spend summers studying abroad in Europe. As for me, I attended a community college in Arizona for 2 years to save on tuition. Then I transferred to a state school, working part-time at the library to afford it. Someone once asked me, "Morgan, why don't you seem jealous of your sister?" I smiled. It wasn't that I'd never been jealous. I had been so jealous it burned my throat every time I saw her being hugged, praised, prioritized. But I learned to snuff it out. Because if I let it grow, it would have turned me bitter. And I didn't want to become like them. Still, the wound stayed, soaking into my heart like slow, relentless rain, rotting wood. Every holiday I hoped something would change. But every year it was the same. Lauren getting expensive gifts, and me receiving a hastily knitted scarf. One year, my mother even forgot to write my name on the card. The only time I saw her cry for me was when I was hospitalized with a severe fever. But afterward she returned to her usual self, as if that brief flicker of softness had never existed. I realized then, I was only loved when my life was hanging in the balance. Otherwise I was simply there. Now looking back, I'm no longer angry. But I'll never forget. Because favoritism isn't about toys, or gifts, or tuition. It's about the way it plants a belief deep inside a child. You are not enough to be loved. And that belief, it grew up with me. Every day. Every year. Each cut invisible to the world. I remember that afternoon perfectly. A rainy April day, with the scent of lilacs heavy in the backyard. I was cleaning the living room when my mom walked in, holding a stack of colorful papers. She didn't look at me. She simply placed it on the coffee table and called upstairs. "Lauren, we got the documents from the lawyer's office." My sister ran down, her golden curls bouncing with each excited step. They sat together, chatting happily. I kept wiping the table, the invisible housemaid in my own home. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But some numbers just sliced through the air too sharply to ignore. $400,000? That was the amount my parents transferred into a joint account for Lauren and her fiancé, Brandon. "A wedding gift from us," my mother said proudly, "to start their new life." 400,000. I set down the cloth. My hand trembled, but I made sure no one saw. I turned away, pretending to check the flowers in the vase, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. It wasn't about the money. It was about how easily they gave it away. As if it was the most natural thing in the world. As if Lauren deserved every good thing without question. I stepped outside onto the porch, sitting down in the wooden chair beside the old pine tree my father once planted. The rain fell lightly, each droplet on my skin feeling like unsaid words. I had once foolishly believed my turn would come. When Lauren and Brandon got engaged, they rented out an entire mountaintop restaurant near Sedona for the party. Fireworks, live band, professional photographers following Lauren's every move. My father gave a teary speech. "My daughter is the light of my life. We've been preparing this gift for years, just for this special day." The whole room stood to applaud. I sat at the very last table near the coat rack, quietly sipping my red wine. My heart clenched, not from jealousy, but because I didn't know what I had done so wrong to never deserve that kind of pride. Later I asked my mom, gently, whether the wedding gifts were meant for all her children. She looked at me without blinking. "You shouldn't compare. Everyone has their own blessings." Blessings. As if family love was a lottery ticket. As if I had drawn the losing card, and was expected to accept it without complaint. Even so, I clung to a fragile hope. I told myself my day would come. That one day I would stand in a room full of relatives, and my father would take my hand and say, voice trembling, "This is my daughter." I worked hard for that dream. At that time, I was a software engineer at a startup in Tempe. The salary wasn't high, but it allowed me to rent a small apartment near campus and slowly save each month. I didn't have a new car. I didn't have designer clothes. But I had my own peace. And a small dream. That one day, when I got engaged, someone would say, "Morgan, it's finally your turn." Lauren bought a house in Scottsdale just 1 week after her wedding. My parents accompanied her and Brandon to sign the paperwork. They posted family photos in front of the house, a wide porch, backyard pool, 3 bedrooms. I saw the pictures in the family group chat. Not once had anyone invited me to come along. A few weeks later, I visited them, bringing a bottle of wine as a gift. When I stepped inside, Lauren laughed. "I thought you were too busy for these little things." I forced a smile, handing her the bottle. Little things? It was a house worth over $500,000, largely funded by my parents' gift. Brandon patted my shoulder and laughed. "You'll have your turn soon, Morgan. When it's your time, don't forget to invite us." I smiled. But inside, a question echoed, that I didn't dare speak aloud. When it's my turn, would it even truly be mine? That night, I returned to my rented apartment. Small but tidy. Where every table and lamp had been chosen and assembled by my own hands. I told myself, it's fine. I'm fine. And I was. At least, for then. I didn't know that just a few years later, when I truly got engaged, every last shred of hope I had kept for my family would be crushed, in the cruelest way. I never thought a sweet offer from my parents could turn into the sharpest blade I'd ever feel. When Eric, my boyfriend at the time, knelt under the blazing October skies of Arizona and proposed, I cried. Not out of surprise, but because I had waited my whole youth for that moment. A kind, sincere man who respected my boundaries. With him, I wasn't Lauren's shadow. I was Morgan, distinct, worthy, and loved. We planned a simple, cozy wedding, budgeting around $36,000. 0 cents the savings we had built over nearly 3 years living and working together in Tempe. No five-star hotel dream. No symphony orchestra. Just close friends, an outdoor venue full of trees, and a ceremony that would feel truly us. When I called to share the good news with my parents, I braced myself for a lukewarm response. But no. My mother's voice was filled with excitement. "Sweetheart, let us take care of everything. Just focus on enjoying yourself. We'll make your wedding perfect." My father chimed in. "You're our daughter, it's your turn, no need to worry." I froze for a few seconds. Hope flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, they finally saw me too. Maybe this time would be different. They asked for every detail: flowers, menus, photography, music. They even toured the venue with us, a small farm outside Prescott, with twinkling lights and a creek running behind a wooden chapel. My mother even cried during the dress fitting. "You look so beautiful. I can't believe my little girl is getting married." In that moment, I let go of the old hurts. I thought, maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe they had changed. The wedding was perfect. Friends laughed, danced under golden lights. Eric squeezed my hand during our vows, his eyes brimming with tears. I laughed so much that night. Everything felt complete, as if every crack in my heart had finally been mended. 2 days later, as Eric and I packed for a short honeymoon in Sedona, an email from a familiar address popped into my inbox. jeremydavis56@gmail.com, my father's. The subject line made me stop cold. "Wedding expenses prompt response requested." I opened the attachment. A detailed Excel sheet appeared, itemizing everything. The flower arrangements for the aisle, $164.22. The shuttle rental from the parking lot, $292.00, all the way down to the tiniest item. The grand total, $35,463.89. At the bottom, a short note. "Please complete payment within 10 days of this email. Sincerely, Jeremy and Helen." No congratulation. No explanation. No hint that this was some kind of joke. I sat frozen in front of the screen. Eric walked in, saw my pale face, and sat beside me. "What's wrong, baby?" I handed him the laptop. He read silently, his eyebrows knitting tighter with every line, his hands clenching into fists. "What the hell is this? They said they would cover everything. You never even asked them to." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My heart felt poured over with cement, heavy and frozen. Memory flooded back. Every kind word, every gesture of love in the past 3 months, all just a setup for the perfect betrayal. Eric stood up angrily, pacing the room. "It's not the money. We could cover it if we had to. But this isn't a bill. It's an insult. They don't see you as family. They see you as debt." I nodded, my eyes dry. "Not debt. Just an outsider." I sat down and rewrote every line item from that invoice. Each number sliced like a small, deliberate wound. Wedding flowers, $1,248.50. White chairs, $920. 0 cents. Musicians, $560. 0 cents. I didn't cry. I only felt a vast emptiness, the same kind I had known since childhood. Always the second-tier daughter in my own home. That night, I wrote a check for the full amount. But I didn't just send the check. I enclosed it with a handwritten 2-page letter, every word steady, but cutting deep. I told them about the 10-year-old girl who once asked why she didn't get a new doll. I reminded them of the forgotten birthdays, the applause always reserved for Lauren. I described how, for a brief moment, I had believed they could truly love me, only to watch them turn the happiest day of my life into the cruelest betrayal. At the end of the letter, I wrote, "This will be the last time any financial link exists between us. From today on, I neither expect nor accept any further support, gifts, or inheritance from you. Please keep it all For Lauren, as always. I sealed the check and letter in an envelope and sent it by express mail. Then, I blocked all their numbers. I don't know what hurt more. The years of favoritism, or the moment I realized I had truly hoped they would be different. But I knew one thing. I would not stay silent anymore. I had thought I was used to being overlooked. But nothing could have prepared me for the feeling of having to pay for the fragile hope I had only just dared to believe in. That evening, after sending Eric out to pick up dinner, because he was pacing the apartment like a caged animal, I sat alone at the kitchen table. I turned off my phone. I switched on the soft yellow lamp. No voices. Just me, a check, and a blank piece of paper. I uncapped the pen. The tip glided over the paper like a blade, each word slicing open my own heart. Dear Mom and Dad. I had never written a real letter to them before. All those years, every feeling had been swallowed, covered with polite, "It's fine, I understand, as long as Lauren's happy." But this time was different. This time, I wrote as if it were the last conversation I would ever have with them. I was going to stay silent. I was going to swallow it all, like every other time. But that invoice, it wasn't just a document. It was a message. You are not our daughter. You are a debt to be collected. Mom, Dad, I didn't ask you for money. You were the ones who offered. With smiles, with hugs. And when I believed, you turned it into a knife. When Lauren got married, everything was a gift. When I got married, everything was a bill to repay. And don't talk to me about fairness, not anymore. Because if fairness means Lauren always got it by default, while I had to earn it, then there was never any fairness to begin with. The enclosed check marks the end of any financial ties between us. I owe nothing. And I expect nothing. As for any future inheritance, keep it. Give it all to Lauren. You made it clear who was the chosen one and who was just a shadow. I sat there, reading the letter 3 times. No edits. Every word was exactly what I had held back for almost 3 decades. I signed it, folded the letter, tucked it inside the envelope along with a check for $35,463.89, the exact amount on the invoice, not a cent missing. I sealed the envelope, stamped it, and asked Eric to drop it off at the post office the next morning. He nodded without saying a word. The way he squeezed my shoulder, silent but firm, nearly broke me. In that moment of crisis, I understood what it truly meant to have someone stand by you unconditionally. That night, I turned on my phone. A missed call from Mom. A text from Dad, reading simply, "Did you receive it?" No Morgan. No sweetheart. Just a cold administrative command. My hand trembled slightly, but I pressed block contact. I did the same with Mom. I removed them from my Facebook friends list and muted the family group chat. I didn't delete my wedding photos, but I never posted anything new afterward. At first the feeling was strange, like peeling off an old layer of skin. Painful, raw, but lighter. 3 days later, I received an email from Aunt Rachel, Mom's younger sister who lived in Oregon. She wrote, "Morgan, I don't know exactly what's happening, but Helen called me sobbing. Did you really send a check? Couldn't you have just called them first?" I deleted the email. No reply. The next text came from Lauren. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Mom and Dad just want fairness. Doesn't all those years raising you count for anything?" I didn't answer. And I wasn't angry anymore. Because someone once said, forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. 2 weeks later, I received a notification from the bank. The check had been cashed. No follow-up letter. No, we need to talk. No explanation. And strangely, the silence itself became the perfect ending. I printed a copy of the letter, the invoice, and the transaction receipt, and filed them neatly in a red folder. Not for revenge, but to remind myself, boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are radical self-love. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out over the blinking lights of Tempe. Eric poured 2 glasses of wine, handing me one. He said softly, "You're stronger than you think." I didn't reply. I just leaned against his shoulder. In my mind, there were no more echoes of Mom calling Lauren's name. No more visions of Dad's proud gaze, following the perfect daughter. I thought it would all end after the check was cashed. That they would step back, remain silent and let me move forward with my life. But, I forgot one thing. Those who are addicted to control never leave quietly when their power is challenged. It started with scattered text messages, from distant relatives I hadn't seen in a decade. Names barely recognizable flashing across my phone, each message hitting like nails into rotting wood. "Morgan, you made your mother cry for a whole week. You cut off your parents over a few $1,000s? Ungrateful. Drama queen, who do you think you are?" An aunt from Kansas, someone I barely remembered, even sent a nearly 2-minute voice message, claiming I was brainwashed by Eric and urging me to apologize before it's too late. I didn't respond to any of them. I knew these people didn't call me on my birthdays. Didn't send Christmas cards. Didn't ask how I was when I broke my leg in college. But the moment I stood up for myself, they reacted as if I had committed treason. 3 days later, while working from my bedroom, I heard pounding at the door. Urgent footsteps echoing through the 4th-floor hallway. Eric wasn't home. I peeked through the peephole. "Lauren." My eye twitched. My hand instinctively tightened on the doorknob. She wore a beige sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun, almost no makeup, a rare sight for Lauren. But her voice was the same. Sharp, entitled, used to being obeyed. "Morgan, open the door, right now." I didn't move. She pounded harder. "Are you planning to hide forever? The family is falling apart because of you." I quietly started recording on my phone. I didn't know how far this would go, but I wasn't naive anymore. "Mom and Dad are heartbroken. And you're here, living like nothing happened? They gave you a wedding and you repay them like they're criminals?" I could hear her heels hammering the tiled hallway. Each word struck like an axe to the peaceful little life I had built. "You're selfish, Morgan. You've always acted like everyone owed you something. But the truth is, you're a stranger to your own family." I leaned against the wall. Not crying. Not angry. Just feeling a sheet of ice melt away inside me, not from heartbreak, but from finally seeing them clearly. Lauren kept yelling. "You want to renounce your inheritance? Fine. But don't think you have the right to destroy everything because of your petty emotions. You're not a victim. I'm the one who had to endure your pathetic wedding, your weird friends and your bland menu." I laughed, dry, small and bitter as sun-scorched lemons. She kept screaming. "And Eric, you really think he loves you? He's just isolating you so he can control you. You're blind, Morgan." I didn't know if the neighbors heard. I didn't care anymore. This was Lauren. The real Lauren. No gloss. No perfect big sister mask. Just a person who couldn't handle losing control. After 15 minutes of ranting, she gasped for air and took 2 steps back. Her final words were a venomous hiss. "You'll regret this, Morgan. Family isn't something you can just throw away over a few pieces of paper." I let her go. No reply. No opening the door. Just kept recording, until the sound of her footsteps faded completely. That night I sent the recording to an email account. Simple subject line: "In case evidence is needed." The recipient was a private email I had set up back in college, a place where I stored things too messy for everyday life. I didn't send it to anyone. But I kept it, like an invisible shield against any future denial. After that event, the number of messages from relatives doubled. Some even attached a photo of Lauren crying in front of my apartment door, captioned, "A kind sister just wanted to talk but her cold-hearted sibling slammed the door." Eric saw the photo. He froze. "There's making up a story now." I nodded. "It's fine. I've lived with this for 28 years. This is just another performance." I changed my phone number. Left all family group chats. adjusted all my social media privacy settings, and I sat down, typing a short sentence into my digital journal. Family ties are not shackles. And sharing blood does not give anyone the right to abuse you. I thought all the anger had been emptied out during Lauren's shouting. But it turned out that was just the opening act for a darker play, starring no one else but my mother. Friday. I had just finished a meeting with my tech team when I received a new email notification. The sender address was unfamiliar, but the name stopped my heart for a second. Helen Davis, my mother. Not from her personal Gmail but from her work email at a small law office in Flagstaff. Subject line: reconsidering recent events. I hesitated for a moment. Then opened the email. Dear Morgan, I know you're hurt, but you should have waited to hear the full story before getting so angry. Do you know why we sent you the invoice? It was a lesson, a way to test your maturity. Your father and I never intended to actually collect the money. We were planning, after a few weeks, to tear up the check and replace it with a $100,000, 0 cents, cashier's check. A real wedding gift for you. But your reaction was so disappointing. I didn't expect you to cut ties so coldly and publicly. Still, I hope you will reconsider. It's not too late to fix things. I read it again. And again. My eyes felt dry and wide open. A lesson? They called that detailed invoice, that frozen email, and the complete silence afterward a morality test? A slow, cold anger bubbled up inside me. Not the kind that flares up suddenly, but the kind that simmers deep, like magma waiting under a mountain. I stood up, paced around the living room, every step compressing years of buried emotions. I opened my laptop and typed quickly, my fingers racing my pounding heart. Dear Mom, thank you for confirming that the entire act of sending an invoice, the cold silence and emotional manipulation was not a mistake, but intentional. The fact that you call it a lesson in responsibility makes it crystal clear this was never about love, it was about control. You called it a test, I call it manipulation. You intended to gift me $100,000, 0 cents. Let me be clear, I don't want, and never needed, any money from someone who views love as a bargaining tool. You've always thought I needed to prove something, but you never understood. It's you who should re-examine how you measure your children's worth with dollars. Please do not contact me further, not even through work. Morgan. I hit send. No hesitation. No shaking hands. That night, Eric came home to find me sitting quietly by the window, holding a glass of water, staring into the distance. Did they reach out again? I nodded. Handed him my phone to read the email. He finished, exhaling sharply. You seriously think that's reasonable? A test? I didn't answer immediately. Just whispered. I think they don't even realize it's wrong, because they were taught this way. That thought triggered a blurry childhood memory of my mom talking about my grandparents. Strict, cold, believing and raising kids with an iron fist. I remembered one time Mom said, I had no choice, my parents didn't even allow me to talk back. Suddenly it became deeper than I had ever realized. Maybe, just maybe, Mom wasn't inventing cruelty. Maybe she was repeating what had once been done to her. Not an excuse, but an explanation. Still, knowing that didn't mean I had to endure it. I opened my notebook and wrote in red ink. Breaking a toxic cycle is not betrayal. It's awakening. 2 days later another email came from Mom, still from her work address. But I didn't read it. I simply filtered it straight to spam. And set an auto-declash rule. I ended the game right there. No more letters, no more replies, no more waiting. Just a decision carved deep by a lifetime of hurt. I was folding a blanket on Monday morning when my phone rang. An unknown number from Colorado lit up the screen. I was about to reject it, but something made me pause. I tapped accept, turned on speakerphone, just in case it was another relative trying a backdoor attack. Morgan. A male voice, deep, raspy, but gentle. Do you recognize me, This is Uncle Rick, your dad's younger brother. I sat up straight, my heart skipping a beat. Rick Davis, a name nearly erased from all family conversations since I was little. I only remembered he once lived in Boulder, Colorado, and that no one ever mentioned him again after a Thanksgiving when I was about 10 years old. Cautiously I answered. Yes, I remember. How are you, Uncle Rick? His voice dropped lower, as if carrying an entire sky of heavy memories. I'm not calling to lecture you. I'm calling because hearing about you brought back memories of myself 30 years ago. I froze. The phone sat on the table, his voice echoing through my tiny apartment. Outside the window, morning sunlight streamed through thin curtains, but inside me, a heavy cloud was beginning to break. Slowly and painfully. Uncle Rick spoke steadily, like reading a diary page buried too long. When I was young, your grandparents, your dad's parents, controlled everything with money. If you didn't obey, they cut you off. If you resisted, they labeled you ungrateful. I thought your dad would be the first to break the cycle. But I was wrong. I clenched my fists, my heart aching with every beat. When I refused to take a loan to pursue filmmaking, they said I was betraying the family. And your dad? He didn't just stay silent. He stood before the entire extended family and said, Rick's delusional. He doesn't appreciate what his parents have done. His voice broke a little as if something fragile inside him had finally cracked. From that point on, I was completely cut off. They made up stories, told everyone I stole money, that I ran off with some woman. No one asked me. They believed it all. Because your grandparents had money, a voice, and the power to create truth. I didn't even realize when tears started falling. My hand loosened, and the pen I had been holding dropped to the floor. Uncle Rick exhaled slowly. Morgan, what you're going through isn't your fault. You're simply the first one clear-headed enough to see it. I asked, my voice trembling. Do you regret it? Standing up? He laughed, a soft, broken laugh. Of course. I regret staying silent for too long before I finally stood up. He paused, then added, You know, the way your dad treats you now, it's exactly how he once sided against me. The cycle, it just keeps repeating generation after generation. I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to scream, to smash something, anything, to release the pent-up pain. But another part of me felt lighter. Because finally, someone had spoken aloud the truth I had long sensed, but could never confirm. I used to think, maybe I was just too sensitive. Or selfish. No, Morgan. You're not wrong. You're just the first one brave enough to break the pattern. Uncle Rick went on to tell me that after cutting ties with the family, he lived simply, working in post-production at a local TV station. Not rich. Not famous. But at peace. I don't have much. But I kept my sanity. And my heart free from resentment. That's the best gift I can pass on to you. A true story, untouched by revision. I clutched the phone tighter, feeling as if someone had placed a steady hand on my shoulder, not to lead me, but simply to remind me. You're not alone. After that call, I couldn't sleep. I sat down and wrote in my journal. I'm not the broken shard of my family. I am the first crack brave enough not to hide. The next day, I printed out the email Uncle Rick sent me. I placed it carefully into the red file folder where I kept everything else. The check. The invoice. The printed letter from my mother. Not for revenge. But so that someday, if anyone claimed I had cut ties for no reason, I would have proof. I was simply the first one who dared to say no. The voicemail came late Thursday evening. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when my phone buzzed with a strange tone. An unfamiliar number. No name. No profile picture. I almost ignored it, like I had been doing with unknown calls lately. But when I checked voicemail, the voice that came through the speaker froze every muscle in my body. It's Dad, Morgan. I stood there, frozen, gripping the edge of the bed. It had been weeks since I last heard anything from Mom. Lauren had gone completely silent after screaming outside my door. But Dad? Dad was always the quiet one in every conflict. And now, he left a message. I don't want us to stay like this. If you can, meet me once. Not to argue. Just to talk. His voice wasn't raised like usual. No blame, no threats. Just tired. Softer. Part of me wanted to delete the voicemail immediately. But another part, the child I used to be, still longing to be seen by her father, held me back. I sent a short text. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., Café Verde. The usual spot. The cafe was on South Mill Avenue. The place I used to take him a few times during college. A simple place, with soft jazz music and sunlight streaming through the windows. I arrived early and picked a table by the window. At 9:05 he walked in. His hair was grayer now, his eyes were sunken, his steps slower. He carried a white envelope, you could tell exactly what was inside. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. He sat down across from me, gripping the coffee cup the server had just brought. We sat in silence for about a minute before he spoke. Not good at talking, you know that. I said nothing. What happened? It shouldn't have gone that way. We should have done things differently. I looked him straight in the eye. You had chances to do things differently. When you sent the invoice. When you stayed silent after cashing the check. When Mom called it a lesson. And you still chose silence until now. He nodded, slowly and heavily. I'm not here to justify myself. I was wrong. At least about how I handled it. About not stopping your mother. And about making you feel abandoned. Hearing him say abandoned cracked something open. Not perfect, but not fake either. He pulled the white envelope from his jacket pocket and pushed it across the table. This is the check you sent. I never deposited it. We didn't need your money. We never did. I pushed the envelope back toward him, firmly. It's not about whether you cashed it. It's about the fact that you made me believe you would. You made me believe love in this family was a contract, violated, and you'd pay. He didn't respond. Just stared down at the wooden table, at an old scratch that had been glossed over with clear lacquer. I continued, my voice steady. I didn't come here to take the check back. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness or beg for understanding. I came to make it crystal clear, clearer than ever, that I can't live under a love that demands submission. He looked up. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. Then, what do you want? I took a deep breath. Then relaxed my shoulders. I want boundaries. I'm no longer the little Morgan who needs validation. I don't need weekly calls. I don't need gifts. I don't need money. I need to live a life free from expectations and control. He sat still. No arguments. No pleading. After a few moments he nodded slightly. If that's what you need, I won't stand in the way. We left the cafe around 10 a.m. Before parting, he grabbed my hand, for the first time in years. I'm not sure I can fix everything. But I'll try to stop making the same mistakes. I pulled my hand back, offering only a faint smile. I hope you do. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I sat on the balcony as a soft breeze brushed through my hair. Eric asked, "You okay?" The Betrayal is interesting. I didn't answer right away. I just sipped my tea, eyes gazing into the distance. It's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. It's closure. Like closing the door on a room you no longer use. Eric nodded and squeezed my hand. I don't know if my father will keep his promise. I don't know what lies ahead. But I know one thing. I am the one setting the boundaries. And I am choosing myself. Morgan's story is a powerful reminder that family ties cannot be based on control or conditions. When love becomes a tool of manipulation, people must choose between silent endurance or standing up for themselves. Morgan chose the latter, even at the cost of distance. But sometimes, true growth doesn't come from mending what's broken, but from setting boundaries, and accepting that you deserve love without having to earn it. And that is true healing. What do you think about Morgan's choice? Was she too harsh, or was it the only way to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories. It was Monday afternoon. I was wrapping up my half-eaten sandwich at the office when my phone rang. It was my mom calling. I answered, and her voice came through sharp and fast like she'd rehearsed the script in her head. "Jennifer, can you come a little early this weekend? Around 3 on Saturday. And don't forget to bring the ivory tablecloth set. The one with the lace trim." I frowned, tightening my grip on the paper coffee cup in my hand. "What's going on, Mom?" "It's the party for Evan's promotion. He got appointed as regional supervisor," she said, like it was something I should have already known. I paused, confused. "You mean, we're hosting a party this weekend?" "That's right," she replied, still calm and matter-of-fact. "Mostly Evan's friends and colleagues. His new boss will be there too. It needs to look presentable." I straightened in my chair. "So, am I invited?" There was a silence. Then she spoke slowly, as if choosing her words carefully. "Well, I didn't think you'd be comfortable at this kind of event. It's mostly business people, talking sales and figures. You know, it's not really your crowd." I pressed my lips together. "But you still want me to come set the table." "Exactly," she chirped, like it was perfectly normal. "Jennifer, no one arranges things as neatly as you do. You've got an eye for detail, don't deny it. I just need help setting up the food, placing the candles, arranging the plates nicely. You don't have to stay if you don't want to." I closed my eyes. There was a lump in my throat, but I forced my voice to stay even. "Okay, what time do you want me there?" 3. Don't be late. Oh, and if you're near the store, grab a pack of the thick paper napkins, just in case we run out." I pushed out a smile she couldn't see over the phone. "Sure, I'll take care of it." "Perfect. You're always my lifesaver. I don't know what I'd do without you." Then she hung up. No goodbye, no thank you. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone's dark screen. Her words kept playing over and over in my head, like a cheap recording. Not invited, not considered a guest, yet expected to show up like some volunteer help, and somehow, I was supposed to be grateful, to be trusted, with that role. My name is Jennifer. I'm 34 years old. I live alone, in a small apartment in Tacoma, Washington. About a 25-minute drive from my parents' house. I moved out 7 years ago, thinking that distance might help me feel less like a forgotten shadow. But every time there's a family event, whether it's a birthday, Christmas dinner, or something special for Evan, my younger brother, that shadow gets pulled back into the room, standing in the middle of the noise and dirty dishes, never bright enough to be seen. Evan is 2 years younger than me and currently works as a regional manager for a retail chain. My mom calls that an outstanding achievement. And me? I'm a legal secretary. Stable. Debt-free. But to them, I'm just the one who can fold napkins neatly and preheat the oven on time. They don't see me as family. I'm the helping hand that keeps things running, only to disappear before the party starts. And party it. I'm tired of pretending that doesn't hurt. I still remember my 29th birthday like it was yesterday. Mom said it happened to fall on the same day as Evan's important meeting in Portland, so the family decided to throw a small party. Without me. When I called to ask, she casually said, "The atmosphere wouldn't suit you anyway, but could you come the day before to prep the cake?" I made a 3-layer strawberry mousse cake, piped white icing letters, and left before the guests arrived. They called it behind-the-scenes support. I called it being politely excluded. 3 years later, I was still brought up at gatherings like that. When they needed someone to color-match flower arrangements, adjust the candles on the table, or clean up broken dessert plates. But never once was I invited as an honored guest, or even just as a family member deserving equal treatment. I used to convince myself I was doing something good, that maybe my family just had trouble showing affection. but they cared in their own way. But the older I got, the more I saw it clearly. I was never their first choice. I was the fallback, called in when things needed to be put together nicely. Tuesday night, I got back to my apartment just as the sky turned gray. Car horns mixed with the soft patter of rain hitting the balcony's metal roof. I tossed my bag on the couch and opened the mailbox. Inside was an ornate invitation from Aunt Laurel, my mom's younger sister, inviting me to her daughter's wedding next month. Jennifer, be sure to wear something stunning and come as an honored guest. Can't wait to see you. I stared at the line, suddenly choking up. Same family, such a strange difference in how I'm treated. I made a cup of hot tea, opened my laptop, intending to check work emails, but instead clicked on an old folder labeled Family. Inside were hundreds of photos I'd taken at big holidays. But I was hardly in any of them. I was the one behind the camera, the one cleaning up, the one handling logistics, never the one being seen. One photo made me freeze. Last year's Thanksgiving. Mom was in the living room smiling with a glass of wine. Evan stood beside her, arm around his fiancée, everyone raising their glasses. And me? I was crouched down, picking up shards from a plate Evan had dropped. My face was hidden behind the table's edge. No one remembered I'd cooked the entire meal that year. Or that I was the first to arrive, and the last to leave. I set my teacup down, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. I'd never felt my invisibility so sharply. The next morning, Mom texted, "Don't be late Saturday, Clara. Evan's HR director is really detail-oriented. Can you help tidy the lilies on the banquet table too?" I read the message, bit my lip and replied, "Sure, I'll remember." A small lie, but a necessary one. Because this time, I wasn't coming to fix flowers. I spent all Wednesday afternoon looking for a small restaurant in Spokane, the one I'd stumbled upon during a work trip 3 years ago. Quiet, warm lighting, and a grilled salmon with lemon honey sauce I'd always wanted to try again. Table for one, 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. By the window, I hit confirm reservation, and felt a surprising lightness inside. That night I dreamed I walked into my parents' house holding a large bouquet of flowers, but everyone just glanced past me. Evan was talking about his latest project. Mom was arranging pastries. Dad had the sports channel on. I stood there in the middle of the noise, then slowly turned and walked out. The flowers slipped from my hands to the floor like they never existed. When I woke up, it was morning. Friday. One day until the party. I opened my closet, pulled out an olive green dress I hadn't worn in years and laid it across the chair. I wasn't bringing the tablecloth. Or the lilies. I was preparing for my own evening, for the first time in years. Not for Evan. Not for Mom. But for me. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. That afternoon, the air was crisp. A light breeze drifted through the third-floor window of my apartment, carrying the scent of dry leaves and the moisture left behind by the morning rain. I sat at my vanity, holding a mascara wand, almost forgetting what I was doing. When was the last time I got ready for something that wasn't a family event? Maybe April's wedding? An old coworker? Nearly 2 years ago? Every time since, if I wore lipstick at all, it was just to avoid looking pale while carrying trays or pouring drinks. But today was different. I chose the olive green dress with the simple V-neck, flattering without being fussy. Paired with beige low heels and a striped scarf I'd bought in August but never wore. Looking at myself in the mirror, I felt strange. Like I was putting on a new skin. Not the obedient daughter, not the ever-punctual helper. But me. A woman creating a moment just for herself. At 5:40, I stepped out of the car, clutching a small purse, and took a deep breath. Willow Creek was tucked behind a row of small roadside shops, its porch lined with golden lanterns and a wooden sign hanging slightly askew on the left. Inside, the lighting was soft, jazz music hummed from a ceiling speaker, and the scent of toasted bread and basil made me wish time would stop right there. I walked up to the host stand and smiled. "Hi. I have a reservation for one Jennifer." The host smiled back and gestured toward a gravel-lined path. "You're a little early, but your table's ready, right this way." My table was by the window, looking out at a small park across the street, where a few families were walking their dogs. A glass of water, and a neatly folded menu, sat on a crisp white tablecloth. I sat down, silenced my phone, and placed it face down on the table. I didn't want to know how many missed calls there were, not tonight. The server returned with a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. "Would you like a glass of Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley?" I nodded. "Yes, thank you, and I'll have the pan-seared salmon with lemon dill sauce." She smiled. "Excellent choice. I'll bring your starter shortly." I leaned back slightly in my chair. Candlelight shimmered on the tabletop like water. In that moment, I felt myself become solid. Not for anyone else. Not for Evan. Not for Mom. But for me. Jennifer. 34. Learning to put herself first. When the salmon was placed in front of me, I could hardly believe my eyes. Vibrant colors, delicate presentation, with thin lemon slices laid gently over a pale ivory sauce. The scent? Butter, black pepper, dill? Felt like a door opening into a world I used to think belonged to other people. I cut a small piece, brought it to my mouth, and let the rich flavor unfold slowly. And surprisingly, I found myself smiling for real. Somewhere just a few blocks away, my mother was probably pacing the dining room, fussing over unlit candles or crooked napkins, and Evan was likely still adjusting his tie in the mirror instead of helping. And me? I wasn't there. They had to manage without me. I was taking a sip of wine when my phone buzzed quietly on the table. A message popped up. "Mom. Jennifer, where are you? Why aren't you here yet?" I stared at the message, feeling strangely calm. Not angry, not guilty, just quiet. Like I had closed a chapter simply by not replying. When dessert arrived, a slice of chilled lemon cake topped with whipped cream and citrus zest, I decided to order a mint tea and stay a while longer. Because I wanted to. Not because someone was waiting. Not because someone needed me as a prop. As I stood up to pay, handing my credit card to the server, she tilted her head and smiled. "Did you have a good evening?" I answered, voice soft as a breath. "Even better than I hoped." And stepped outside, letting the night breeze carry the scent of vanilla gently across my shoulders. At the suburban house in Spokane, the afternoon sunlight had begun to soften, slipping through the large dining room windows. Helen, my mother, was still bustling around the dinner table, her heels clacking against the hardwood floor. 4:15. She glanced at the clock for the 4th time in less than 5 minutes. "Why isn't she here yet?" she muttered, pulling out her phone to call again. The call rang for a while, then went to voicemail. She clenched her phone, lips tightening. "Jennifer, you said you'd be here by 3. The tablecloth hasn't been ironed, the candles aren't set, the appetizers are still in the fridge. Call me back right now." In the kitchen, my dad Gary was arranging plates on the island, his voice calm, but strained. "Maybe she's on her way. Got stuck in traffic?" Evan came down the stairs with a crooked tie and a soda in hand. "Or she forgot," he shrugged. "Wouldn't shock me. Jennifer's always got that 'I don't need anyone' attitude, but when push comes to shove, she's nowhere to be found." Mom snapped her head around to glare at him. "Don't pour gasoline on this. It's your party, Evan. Maybe try helping. Light some candles? Fix the salad plates?" Evan shrugged again and headed straight to the patio, where a few of his coworkers were already sipping wine and chatting. In the kitchen, the appetizer tray hadn't been brought out. Bouquets of flowers still sat in buckets by the sink. Helen was visibly unraveling. She was always particular about details, and when Evan's professional crowd was involved, she cared more about appearances than anything else. She turned to her husband. "Gary, help me fold the napkins. I told Jennifer to be here early. Who knew she'd pull this? Gary sighed, fumbling through a drawer. Each napkin was a different color. None matched the candles already on the table. Then her phone buzzed again, a message, from me. Mom, I'm sorry, I'm busy tonight, I won't make it. Just one line. No punctuation. No explanation. No prior warning. She froze for a few seconds, then dialed immediately. 3 rings, then it cut off. The screen read coldly, unavailable. She set the phone down on the table, staring blankly. She's not coming. Gary stopped folding and looked up. Not coming? What do you mean? She repeated herself, this time her voice trembling. She texted. Said she's busy. She's not coming. I pictured it clearly while sitting in the restroom of Willow Creek, where the lighting was soft, and the faint scent of lavender came from a small glass jar on the shelf. I had just read her message, and placed my phone face down on the sink. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I had never openly refused like this. Never? The next text came from Evan. Classic Evan. You serious? Leaving Mom to spin in circles? Thanks a lot. Hope your fancy dinner's as tasty as this cold salad we're choking down. I silenced the notifications. No response. No need to. No reason to. Back home, the dinner party was descending into quiet chaos. One of Evan's co-workers, a woman named Melissa, stepped inside, glanced at the table, and asked under her breath, "Is this like a rustic theme?" Mom forced a smile, lying out of habit. "Oh yes." A deliberate casual vibe. But her voice betrayed her. Every out-of-place detail on that table was like a silent slap, reminding her that the reliable background help she'd always counted on wasn't standing behind her anymore. I knew they were looking for me, scanning that house full of stiff smiles and half-hearted jokes. I knew Mom was running between plates and glasses, mentally cataloging everything still undone. I also knew that, somewhere in that house, Evan was probably smirking and telling someone I was being dramatic as usual. But this time, I didn't have to explain. I returned to my table where dessert had just arrived. A small chocolate mousse cake topped with fresh strawberries. I picked up the spoon, watched the candlelight shimmer against my wineglass, and I felt that not showing up had been the right choice. Across the city, that house would have to cope without the daughter who knew how to do everything. And maybe, just maybe, they'd realize no one carries everything forever. Not even Jennifer. The soft clink of my knife against the plate echoed in the warm space of Willow Creek. Yet all I could hear was silence. No shouting from the kitchen. No Evan grumbling. No one urging me to hurry up before the guests arrive. I took a sip of the 2019 Pinot Noir the server had suggested, smooth, laced with ripe cherry and a hint of gentle spice. It wasn't sweet in a way that begged for approval. It was subtle, honest. Like me now, finally living in alignment with my own emotions. An older couple 2 tables over raised their glasses in a toast. The woman, silver-haled and elegant in a beige silk blouse, smiled brightly at the man across from her. He reached across the table and gently held her hand. No words passed between them, but their eyes held something I had never seen in my family: genuine presence. I slowly savored another bite of the chocolate mousse cake topped with strawberries, letting the cream melt on my tongue. There was no rush. No watching eyes making me sit straighter or fix my dress hem. When the server returned and asked if I'd like anything else, I just shook my head softly. "Thank you, I'd just like to sit a little longer." She smiled and walked away without pressure. I turned back to the window. Outside, the park across from the restaurant was lit now. A few cars rolled slowly across the brick-paved street, their taillights reflected in streaks of amber and red on the damp road, like watercolor. I unlocked my phone, not to check messages, just to glance at the time. 7:22 p.m. This time last year, I was scrubbing gravy splatters off the kitchen wall from the roast Evan had burned, while Mom pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't let the guests see this, Jennifer. You take care of it." I turned off the screen and placed the phone face down. It vibrated again. "Tell me more. Jennifer, I honestly don't understand what's going on. I was counting on you. You can't do this to me." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because I knew exactly what was going on. I was going on. Jennifer, the one who had always lived in the blurry margins of family where every helpful act was just expected, was stepping out of that role. I wasn't abandoning them. I was simply reclaiming myself from a space they'd always kept me at the edges of. I raised my glass again, this time in a toast to myself. A quiet lift no one else witnessed, but maybe the most important one I've ever made. A group of young friends in the corner burst into laughter at a shared joke. The server brought them another tray of pastries, the air buzzing with energy, but not chaos. I felt like the world was larger than the four walls of my parents' house, where every role had been pre-assigned and I never got to redefine who I was. As I stood to pay, a woman at the next table offered me a kind smile and said quietly, "You look so at peace, dining alone. I admire that." I tilted my head slightly. "Thank you. I chose myself tonight." She nodded, her eyes warm with unspoken understanding. As I stepped out of the restaurant, the evening breeze brushed through my hair, carrying the scent of pine from the woods behind the park. I adjusted my scarf and walked along the stone path toward the parking lot. My phone buzzed again. This time, from Dad. "Jennifer, your mom's really stressed. Can you call back? We should talk later." I paused for a few seconds and looked up at the cloudy sky. No stars, but it wasn't as dark as I expected. I didn't delete the message. But I didn't reply either. Not out of anger, but because tonight, everything I needed to hear had come from within. I got into my car, settled into the driver's seat, and turned on the radio. A soft jazz tune played. No words, just rhythm and air. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying home the bitter aftertaste of another family gathering. I was carrying the taste of chocolate mousse, the sound of quiet glass toasts, and the feeling of being heard. By myself. In the dining room of my parents' suburban home in Spokane, the warm glow from the chandelier couldn't hide the disorder splayed across every table and cold dish. The cream-colored tablecloth my mother grabbed hastily from the old linen closet was wrinkled and stained with faint marks. Maybe old coffee? Maybe sauce? Half-melted candles burned unevenly, their wax dripping down onto the glass coasters below. The appetizers, my usual bruschetta, were pulled out from the fridge far too late. The bread had gone soft, the tomatoes limp, the basil wilted sadly atop the cheese. Evan stood by the counter, holding an open beer he didn't drink, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for a way out. His co-workers, mostly young office professionals, were whispering to each other. A few had already left early, citing tomorrow's charity run as an excuse. A woman in a black dress forced a polite smile as my mother offered her more wine. "The vibe here? It's different, kind of vintage, right?" My mother tried to smile, but her cheeks were flushed with stress and embarrassment. "Oh. Yes. Things were a bit rushed today. My daughter..." She hesitated. Jennifer usually helps with this part, but this time she had other plans. The woman nodded courteously, then turned back to her group. My father stood quietly in the kitchen corner, staring at a crookedly folded napkin and a candle dripping wax sideways. He picked up the lighter I used to light those candles every holiday, then placed it down slowly, almost like realizing it wouldn't be used tonight, just like I wasn't. "Gary, I swear if Jennifer had arrived on time like usual, this table would look 10 times better," my mother muttered, trying to steady a tipped-over flower vase. Dad didn't answer right away. Then he looked her squarely in the eye. You thought all you had to do was call and she'd come running. You thought she'd always clean up after us, cover for Evan, fold napkins at Hotel Perfect without anyone even asking if she was tired. Are you blaming me? My mom snapped. I didn't do anything wrong. Jennifer's always been good at these things. I just trusted her. No, Dad said firmly, carrying disappointment in his voice. You treated her like a shadow. An invisible one. Always there to fill the cracks this family left behind. Mom went quiet. A moment later, she lowered her head and wiped a splash of wine off the table with a trembling hand. Nobody said anything more. In the background, laughter trickled faintly from the last remaining guests. But their eyes were no longer on Evan. They glanced at the mess around them, forcing smiles as they politely excused themselves. By 8:30 p.m., nearly everyone had left. One of Evan's friends leaned in to whisper something that made him frown. Then he placed his drink down and disappeared upstairs. In the kitchen, only 3 remained: my mom, my dad, and a mountain of dirty dishes. The scent of cold food mingled with the faint smell of burnt candle wax and wilted basil. A few untouched slices of bread still sat on the platter. In the middle of the table, the flower vase leaned to one side, reminding everyone that not everything could be forced into place. Dad washed his hands and stared out the window, where the soft lights of Willow Creek reflected gently off the windshield of a parked car across the street. This is the first time she didn't come, he said quietly. And everything fell apart. Literally. Mom sat down, eyes fixed on the tablecloth, as if searching for an answer in its creases. But she said nothing. Her phone buzzed. A message. From me. Mom, I'm not angry, but I'm exhausted from being called in only to patch up everyone's messes. She read it, then laid the phone gently on the table. No one in the house spoke another word. And somewhere else in the city, I sat curled up on my couch, wrapped in a wool scarf, a cup of chamomile tea in hand. I didn't need to read their replies to know how they were feeling. That house no longer had me. And it wasn't a temporary absence. It was the clearest truth yet. They had lost something they thought would always be there with a snap of their fingers. Sunday morning, I woke up later than usual. Gentle sunlight streamed through the curtains, landing on the wooden floor where my shoes from the night before still sat neatly placed. In the kitchen, the kettle let out a soft whistle. I poured chamomile tea into a white porcelain cup and sat at the dining table by the window, overlooking the small park below. Everything felt unusually peaceful. No surprise obligations. No guilt for choosing myself. No barrage of requests. Just as I lifted the cup, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Sweetheart, I'm sorry for letting things get this far. If you're ready, can we sit down and talk? I set the cup down. I read that message again and again, not quite believing it came from my father. Gary Anderson. The reserved, composed man who had never once admitted fault within our family. Especially not to my mom. And certainly never to me. There was no cold tone, no deflection, no sidestepping. Just one simple sentence that softened something inside me. I thought back to last night. After leaving Willow Creek, I'd driven around the old neighborhood where I grew up. The tree-lined streets were just as quiet as I remembered, calm and somewhat indifferent. I had been part of that place, but never truly felt I belonged. What I didn't know then was that, back at the familiar house, Dad had been staring at a chaotic dinner table, Mom had sat frozen before a tilted candle, and Evan had slipped upstairs without a word. Maybe for the first time, they didn't have me to turn to, for blame, or for solutions. I didn't respond right away. Not out of anger, but because there were too many unspoken truths swelling like a lump in my throat. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning my apartment. Not because it was messy, but because I needed to do something for myself. Wiping down the kitchen counter, straightening my bookshelf, folding the blanket on the couch, Each task helped me breathe again. Like I was slowly piecing back together parts of myself that had been neglected for the sake of helping others. By early afternoon, I finally texted back. Okay. But I need you to really listen. No justifying, no brushing it off like always. His reply came in under 2 minutes. I promise. Just you and me. No mom, no Evan, just the two of us. That single message made my eyes sting. We arranged to meet Monday morning at a small cafe on the corner of Bellevue, where I'd once worked part-time in college. Dad knew the place. He had driven me there on my first day, bought me a cappuccino and said, "Welcome to the adult world." Maybe this meeting would mark another milestone. Not for me, but for him. I arrived 10 minutes early. The cafe was just as I remembered. Warm amber lights, the smell of cinnamon waffles and espresso hanging in the air. I chose a window seat, ordered a latte, and waited. At exactly 8 o'clock Aimuni, my dad walked in, wearing a light blue shirt, a dark canvas jacket, and an expression that looked a bit worn. When he saw me, he nodded, relieved. As if setting something heavy down. "Hi, Jennifer." I nodded. "Hi, Dad." He sat across from me, placing his hands on the table without reaching for the menu. After a long pause, he said, "Last night, your mom was pretty upset. But me? I just stayed quiet. Because I saw you doing something right. For you." I gripped my latte a little tighter but said nothing. "I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner," he continued. "For letting you become the one holding everything together while we kept causing the chaos." I looked up. No defensiveness. No excuses. Just truth. Bare, and overdue. "I'm not angry you asked me to help," I said slowly. "I'm angry no one ever asked if I wanted to be part of it. I was just used when it was convenient. Then invisible again when it wasn't." Dad nodded, his eyes fixed on the tabletop. "I understand now, and I'm truly sorry. I didn't know if an apology could change anything. But in that moment, I felt seen. No longer just the dependable daughter, the quiet cleaner-upper, or the safe fallback. I was Jennifer. A person with feelings, limits, and worth." We sat in silence for a few more minutes. But it was the most peaceful silence I'd ever shared with him. And I believed that something real could change. Beginning with this quiet acknowledgement. 3 days after the talk with Dad, I got a message from Mom. "Jennifer, I know you're upset, but I really want to see you, just the two of us. If you're willing, I'd like to meet you for coffee at Sugar and Bloom tomorrow afternoon." I stared at the screen for a long time. Sugar and Bloom was the cafe Mom always bragged about to her friends, the place where she ordered vanilla lattes and sat for hours flipping through home decor magazines. Part of me wanted to say no, the hurt was still too raw. But another part wanted to hear what she had to say, now that there was no dinner table to hide behind and no Evan to shift the blame to. I texted back simply, "I'll be there, 3 o'clock. The next day, I arrived right on time. Mom was already seated at a window table, cradling a cappuccino, her eyes absent-mindedly watching the street. She wore a pale beige sweater and a silk scarf tied at the neck, her signature look when trying to stay composed under pressure. I walked over and gave a small nod. "Hey, Mom." She looked up and gave a tight smile. "Thank you for coming." I ordered a chamomile tea and sat across from her. A long silence stretched between us, between the woman who learned to keep quiet to avoid hurting anyone, and the woman who gave orders to keep everything under control. Mom spoke first, her voice surprisingly soft. "Jennifer, I've done a lot of thinking since the party. And I know I was wrong." I didn't say anything. I waited. "To do with your outstanding work ethic? I got used to you being the one who made everything work. You always handled things without being asked, and maybe because of that, I started taking it for granted. I never stopped to ask if you wanted to be part of it, or even just treated like a regular family member. I gripped my teacup. I don't need to be the center of attention, Mom. But I also don't want to be the one always behind the scenes. For years, you only called on me when you needed tables set, food made, presents wrapped, messes cleaned up. But when the actual celebration began, I disappeared from the guest list. Do you know how that feels? Mom lowered her gaze. She didn't deflect. I continued, finally saying what I'd buried for so long. I grew up in that house, but I always felt like an outsider. Evan was the golden child. Always excused, always praised, no matter what he did wrong. I had to work twice as hard just to be noticed. And the minute I said no once, I was called irresponsible. Mom's eyes turned red, but her voice stayed calm. I played favorites, I know that. And I deeply regret it. Not just because you missed the party, but because I made you carry the weight of everything for too long, and no one noticed. Not even when you were tired. I exhaled slowly, a strange sense of calm settling over me. I don't need praise, I just want to be seen as a person. To be invited because I'm your daughter, not because I'm the most convenient one to assign tasks to. She nodded slowly. From now on, I won't assume you'll handle everything. And if we have another family gathering, I'll ask you if you'd like to come. Not to help, just to attend. As a real guest. I promise. We sat there, our drinks cooling. Without drama, or tears. Just the quiet honesty of two women trying to peel away years of silence and armor. I nodded. I accept your apology. But you need to understand, I'm still learning to put myself first. And that won't change. I understand, she said, and I respect that. When we left Sugar and Bloom, I didn't hug her. But we walked side by side. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over our shoulders. And for the first time, I felt something like equality between us. Not every wound heals at once. But that day, I knew this much. Mom finally saw me. Not as the fixer. Not as the daughter who should help. But as a whole person, with limits, emotions, and the right to be treated fairly. And for me, that was a beginning. 2 weeks after the talk at Sugar and Bloom, I received a message from Mom. The family is planning a lunch next Sunday. No special occasion, just to gather everyone. I want to invite you, truly invite you. And if you agree to come, I'd like to ask what dish you'd like me to prepare. I stared at the screen, blinking. No hint that I should come early to help. No checklist hidden behind sweetness. No implied duties. Just an invitation. Plain and honest. I replied, I'll come. Please make your roasted chicken lasagna, and this time, I'd like to sit down and eat like everyone else. A few minutes later she wrote back. Of course, sweetheart. That afternoon I arrived on time. Not early. I didn't carry my usual tote bag filled with linens, scented candles, or extra serving dishes. Just a bottle of red wine and a store-bought apple tart from the bakery near my apartment. Like any other guest would bring. When I walked in, the kitchen was still a little messy, cheese bubbling, roasted tomatoes filling the air. But no one panicked that I hadn't come early to fix it all. Mom stepped out from the kitchen with a bright smile and a kitchen towel in hand. You're here. The lasagna's almost ready. Want iced tea or red wine? I smiled. Red wine, please. I sat at the dining table, already set with fresh flowers and matching glasses. The tablecloth wasn't perfect. A few forks weren't aligned, but this time, I didn't feel the urge to fix everything like a showroom. It was warm. Human. Evan sat across from me. His glance was brief, no familiar smirk. You look good, he said, a little awkwardly. Mom said you liked apple tart. I brought one too, but it probably doesn't look as nice as yours. I was surprised, but didn't overreact. I just nodded. Thanks. It's not a competition, right? He chuckled softly and turned to pour himself more water. The meal was lighthearted. Mom wasn't frantically doing everything. Dad served each person, talking about his volunteer work at the community center. And me? I listened, smiled, and didn't once have to get up for someone's extra plate. After the main course, Mom gently placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Stay seated. I'll clean up. Today, you're a guest." I almost didn't believe what I heard. But that feeling of being seen, included, truly warmed something in me. In the weeks that followed, change slowly became routine. One Thursday afternoon, Mom texted, "Thinking of trying cinnamon butter toast this weekend, do you think I should use unsalted or salted butter?" Another week, Dad called, "Mom and I are thinking of going to Oregon for Thanksgiving. Want to join? If so, would you prefer a cabin or hotel?" Every message, every time they asked my opinion, felt like little puzzle pieces restoring the place I thought I never had. I wasn't the person remembered, only when something needed fixing. I was someone considered before decisions were made. One evening, while brewing tea, I received a message from Evan. "I'm thinking of taking an extended break to study some management courses. Could you help me choose the right ones?" I stared at the text, unsure whether to laugh or be surprised. Evan, who used to dismiss everything I said, now asked for my advice? Maybe he wasn't completely changed. But, I realized, people only start respecting you when they're forced to see your worth. I know that one meal, one apology, or a few thoughtful texts can't undo years of feeling overlooked. But I also understand now, every small step is part of a new journey. A journey where, this time, I'm not walking behind the scenes, but moving forward as a grown woman who knows she deserves respect and refuses to return to being invisible. A crisp October morning, I opened my laptop, slid my wooden chair closer to the window, and clicked on the tab I'd bookmarked 3 months ago. 10-day Greece tour. Explore Santorini and Athens. Just beneath the title, the words, "Only 3 spots left," flashed in soft red. I didn't hesitate. I booked the trip. Not to escape, but to mark a beginning. I chose to do something just for myself, without asking permission, without checking if it clashed with a family event, or if anyone needed anything from me. And I exhaled. Like shedding a heavy coat I'd worn for so long I forgot it was there. Since that lunch at my mom's, my family had gradually started treating me with more fairness. But what I learned was even more important. I wasn't obligated to keep doing something just because that's how it's always been. I began setting boundaries. Not with loud declarations, but with quiet, consistent choices. A week later, Mom texted, "Can you come early to help with Uncle Frank's dinner? I'm a bit overwhelmed with dessert." I replied, "I'd be happy to come, but I'll arrive at 6:30 as a guest. If you need help, maybe hiring someone would ease your stress." A minute passed. 2. Then she wrote, "You're right, I'll get help. Just come and enjoy yourself." I knew she was a little disappointed, but she didn't guilt-trip me. I didn't feel like I owed her an apology for prioritizing myself. I signed up for Tuesday and Friday morning yoga. Before, that schedule would have been constantly postponed for last-minute family things. Not anymore. If someone called during class, I didn't answer. My life finally had non-negotiable hours. I also began writing again, not emails or legal briefs, but personal blog posts about my journey out of the dutiful daughter role. The first post was titled, "It's not rebellion. It's living honestly." It was shared hundreds of times in 2 days. I received messages from women I'd never met, daughters, wives, mothers, all exhausted from carrying invisible weight like I had. One Saturday evening, while reading on my couch, Evan called. "Jennifer, I know this is weird, but I'm planning my birthday without Mom, organizing it for the first time. I don't know whether to rent a restaurant or just use the backyard. What do you think?" I smiled. "If you want it simple, a restaurant's easier, but if you want something more intimate, the backyard works. Just don't let mom do it all. I'm handling it myself. I want to do it on my own this time. Then you've grown a lot, I said genuinely, not mockingly. By November, I was preparing for Santorini. I bought a new suitcase, booked a sunset sailboat tour, and learned a few basic Greek phrases. Mom texted, "Remember to stay warm, drink plenty of water, and send me pictures." I replied, "Don't worry. But this time, the pictures are for me." She only responded with a heart emoji. The day I flew out, I wore a caramel-colored coat I'd treated myself to earlier that fall. In my pocket were my plane ticket, passport, and a small journal for travel notes. At the gate, I checked my phone and saw a message from Dad. "We're proud of you. For the first time, I see you living for yourself. Have an amazing trip." I didn't reply immediately. I just stared at the message, feeling my heart settle. Quiet as wind over open sea. I had once been a girl who lived to please everyone but herself. But now, I was a woman rewriting the script of her life. Not to make others happy, but to finally, truly live. Jennifer's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't sacrificing for others, but learning to say no to protect yourself. Only when we stop trying to please everyone and start setting boundaries do people truly see our worth. Jennifer didn't just reclaim respect from her family, she found freedom and agency in her life. Something so many of us quietly long for every single day. What do you think about Jennifer's journey? Have you ever found yourself in a situation like hers? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel to keep exploring more heartfelt stories about family and life. I used to believe that my family was my entire world. A small but complete world where I had my parents and peaceful days. I thought happiness was forever. But if someone had told me that one day everything would change, that all I loved would become nothing more than memories, I would have scoffed and brushed it off. I didn't know that time never stands still, and that my perfect world was far more fragile than I had realized. My name is Claire Benson, born and raised in a small town in the Midwest. My family wasn't wealthy, but we had each other. My father, David Benson, was an accountant, a quiet man, but one who always found a way to make me laugh when he came home after a long day. My mother, Lisa Benson, was an elementary school teacher, someone who brought warmth and kindness wherever she went. I had a simple yet happy childhood. On weekends, our family would pile into our old Ford Explorer, setting off to explore endless roads. We never went far, sometimes just to a quiet lake or a small campsite. But to me they were always magical adventures. Dad loved playing old songs, singing along off-key, while Mom never hesitated to belt out the wrong lyrics. I would sit in the back seat, pretending to cover my ears and complain, but deep down I wouldn't have changed a thing. When we weren't on the road, we spent time at the local shopping mall. I would drag Mom through countless stores, trying on outfit after outfit, then dramatically turning them down. She was always the voice of reason, while Dad, he was my secret ally. Whenever Mom wasn't looking, he would slip a few dollar bills into my hand and whisper, "Don't tell your mother, princess." I always knew Mom figured it out, but she never scolded him, maybe because she enjoyed seeing me happy too. But my favorite moments were Friday nights. Pizza nights. We didn't have any special family traditions, but Fridays were always reserved just for us. We'd sprawl out on the living room floor, watching a movie that didn't really matter as long as we were together. Dad always tried to explain the plot, even when no one asked. Mom kept shushing him, and I focused on my pizza, not caring about anything except that moment. No homework, no worries, no responsibilities. Just the warmth of my family and the sound of our laughter filling the room. I used to believe that was happiness forever. But nothing lasts forever, does it? I don't know exactly when everything started to change. At first it was just little things. Mom seemed more tired after work or stared out the window longer than usual. I noticed she started taking more pills, those tiny white ones she kept hidden in the kitchen drawer. But when I asked, she simply smiled, gently ruffled my hair and said, I'm just a little exhausted, sweetheart. Teachers are always busy. I believed her. Weekend trips became less frequent and then stopped altogether. The Ford Explorer still sat in the driveway, covered in dust, as if it, too, was waiting to be driven again. Pizza nights still happened, but instead of the three of us laughing and talking, it was just me and Dad, silently chewing our food while Mom went to bed early on the couch. Movies lost their charm without her teasing commentary. I don't know when I started dreading Friday nights. Then came the days when Mom disappeared for entire afternoons. Dad said she had to see the doctor, but I never understood why someone who was just a little exhausted needed to go to the hospital so often. Once, I stood outside my parents' bedroom, listening through the door. I heard Dad's voice, so quiet, so fragile, almost breaking. "Is there another way, doctor?" I never heard the response. As time passed, my mother grew noticeably thinner. Dad started coming home later, always carrying a quiet sadness on his face. Whenever I asked, he would just say everything was fine, but I could feel it. Something terrible was coming. And then, the day finally came. It was a Tuesday, but I don't remember the exact date. I only remember coming home, dropping my backpack on the floor as usual, and calling out, "Mom, I'm home!" No answer. The house was too quiet, eerily still. Then I heard something. The steady beeping of a machine upstairs. I ran up the stairs. The door to my parents' bedroom was slightly open. Mom lay there, her face pale beyond belief, her breathing so faint I could barely hear it. A man in a white coat stood beside her, his eyes filled with silent sympathy. Dad sat on the edge of the bed, gripping her hand, as if letting go would mean losing her forever. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. "Mom is gone, Claire." The world collapsed around me. I don't remember how I reacted. I only remember the emptiness. The hollowness. As if someone had taken a part of my soul, without warning. I stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to open her eyes. Waiting for her to tell me this was all just some cruel joke. But she never opened her eyes again. The days that followed passed in a haze. Whispers filled the house, black clothes, sympathetic hugs from people whose names I didn't even remember. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't talk. Every morning I would wake up and forget for a few seconds. Then reality would crash down on me again. Merciless, like a knife straight to the heart. Dad wasn't doing much better than I was. He seemed like a shadow of himself. Quiet, empty. We were like two people lost in the same storm, not knowing what to hold on to. I used to think my family was my whole world, but that world had just shattered. Right before my eyes. 6 months after Mom passed, I still hadn't gotten used to the silence in this house. Pizza nights were gone. The Ford Explorer still sat in the driveway, covered in dust. Just like our lives. Dad barely spoke to me, and I didn't know what to say to him. We were like strangers living under the same roof, each trapped in our own grief. Then, one day, Dad started coming home late. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed he was just burying himself in work to escape the pain of losing Mom. But then, late nights became the norm. And something changed. He wasn't coming home looking exhausted anymore. He started taking secret phone calls, reading messages with a small smile, and quickly putting his phone away whenever I walked into the room. I didn't think too much about it, until one evening, when Dad called me downstairs. I walked down the stairs and saw a woman sitting on the couch. She had golden blonde hair, sharp blue eyes, and a smile that I immediately disliked. "Claire, I want you to meet Vanessa." That name stuck in my head like something inherently wrong. Vanessa. A stranger. Sitting on my mother's couch. In my house. Looking at me as if she belonged here. "Hi Claire, your dad has told me so much about you," she said. Her voice sickeningly sweet. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Dad hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Vanessa and we met a few months ago. She's wonderful, and I think you should get to know her." Wonderful? Mom had only been gone for 6 months, and Dad was already calling another woman wonderful? It felt like someone had just punched me straight in the chest. But Dad didn't notice my shock. He didn't see my fists clenched so tightly that my nails nearly dug into my skin. He was smiling. For the first time in months, he was truly smiling. I hated that smile. Vanessa entered our lives like a storm, washing away everything that remained of my mother. She pretended to be gentle and caring whenever Dad was around, cooking dinner, inviting me to go shopping, even offering to help with my homework. But when it was just the two of us, her smile disappeared. "Listen, kid," she whispered one day in the kitchen. "I know you don't like me, and I don't care. But I'm here to stay, got it?" Rage flared inside me. "You can't replace my mother." She tilted her head, her eyes cold. "I don't need to replace her. I just need you to disappear." I tried to tell Dad. I tried to warn him about Vanessa, about how she treated me when he wasn't around. But he wouldn't listen. He didn't want to listen. "Claire, you need to accept this." "No, Dad. She's not a good person. I've seen who she really is." Dad sighed, rubbing his temples as if I was nothing more than a headache. "I know this has been a difficult time, but you can't keep resisting. Vanessa cares about you. Maybe you should try to open your heart." Open my heart? She wanted me gone. But no matter what I said, Dad refused to believe me. And then, as if to put an end to my protests once and for all, he made his final decision. "Vanessa and I are getting married next month." The words hit me like a hammer. I could barely breathe. "You'll be going to summer camp, Claire. I think it will help you adjust." I stared at him, hoping this was some kind of sick joke. But he wasn't laughing. He really wanted to send me away. To make sure I wasn't there on his wedding day. I wanted to scream, to break everything in sight. But I didn't. I just nodded. Fine. Because in that moment I realized something. Dad was no longer on my side. 3 months passed since I was sent to summer camp. I don't remember much about my time there. Only that I spent most of it counting down the days until I could go home. Even though I hated Vanessa, even though I didn't want to see my father marry her, I still longed to return. To my room. To whatever was left of Mom. But when I stepped through the doorway on that August afternoon, I knew I had made a mistake. The house wasn't the same. The pictures of Mom that once hung in the living room were gone. Her favorite armchair where she used to sit and read every night had vanished. In its place was a completely different space. Cold. Unfamiliar. Polished decorations. A sleek, expensive couch I had never seen before. A grand chandelier hanging from the ceiling. And Vanessa, standing in the center of it all, one hand resting on her stomach. Her stomach was visibly round. I froze. "Welcome home, Claire," she smiled, victory gleaming in her eyes. Dad stepped out from the kitchen, his face glowing as if this was the best news in the world. "Sweetheart, I have great news. You're going to be a big sister. Vanessa is pregnant." The shock hit me like a tidal wave. Mom had only been gone a year. I was still struggling to accept that she wasn't here anymore. And yet, Dad was already ready for a new family. A new child. Vanessa gently ran her hand over her stomach, her voice as sweet as honey. "We're really hoping you'll be happy about this, Claire. A fresh start for all of us." A fresh start. I said nothing. I couldn't. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. As I dragged my suitcase toward my room, Vanessa stepped in front of the door, blocking my way. "Oh, I almost forgot," she said lightly, as if discussing the weather. "Your room is now the baby's room." I stared at her, stunned. "What?" "We need space for the baby, and your room was the best option," Vanessa shrugged. "But don't worry. Your father has already arranged a new place for you." I turned to Dad, desperately hoping he would deny it. Hoping he would stand up for me. But he just stood there, avoiding my gaze. "You'll stay in the guest room, Claire. We didn't have any other choice." The guest room? I opened the door to my new room. A tiny, empty space with a single bed and a small dresser. My belongings had been stuffed into boxes, left unopened. It didn't feel like a bedroom. It felt like a temporary stay. Like I wasn't a part of this family anymore. In the days that followed, Vanessa began drawing invisible boundaries. Every time I asked Dad about Mom's belongings, Vanessa would sweetly remark that some things just don't fit the new house anymore. Every time I tried to join a conversation about the baby, she would laugh lightly and tell me I was too young to understand grown-up matters. Gradually, I wasn't allowed to be around Dad for too long. But the part that hurt the most was my little brother. The baby I had never even met yet, but had already been stripped of my right to be his sister. Vanessa made my presence unwanted. Dad had a new family, a new life, and I was nothing more than an extra piece in their perfect picture. I used to count down the days until I could come home. But now all I wanted was to leave as soon as possible. I learned how to disappear. I woke up earlier, stayed out later, avoided family meals where Vanessa controlled the conversation and Dad only nodded in agreement. Every time I tried to talk to him, Vanessa found a way to cut in, making me feel like an outsider in my own home. But I had a plan. I focused on school. I knew that graduating high school was my only ticket out. I buried myself in homework, joined extracurricular activities, and did everything I could to secure a spot in a good university. Vanessa, of course, wasn't happy about that. "Do you think you're special?" she sneered at me once when we were alone in the kitchen. "College isn't for ungrateful little brats. After high school, you should get a real job and start contributing to this family." This family? I almost laughed. But I didn't respond. I just gripped my book tighter, telling myself I couldn't let her see me waver. Then, one day, the argument finally happened. I remember that night clearly. I was sitting in the living room, working on my homework, when Vanessa suddenly walked in and threw a stack of papers onto the table. "Your father and I have talked. We can't afford to send you to college, so you'll need to start working right after graduation." I froze. "What? Your father agrees with this?" she continued, crossing her arms, a smug look in her eyes. "He said the family's savings will go toward more important things. You need to be realistic, Claire." I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the anger that had been building up for years. Maybe the desperation of knowing I was about to lose my only way out. But I shot up from my seat, locking eyes with her. "What savings? The money my mother left for me?" Vanessa stiffened. She hadn't expected me to know about it. I turned to Dad, who had just walked into the room, his face full of unease. "Dad, is it true? Did Mom save money for my college?" Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Claire, I think we need to reconsider." "You promised," I cut him off, my voice shaking. "You promised Mom." Dad looked down. I didn't know if it was because he felt guilty, or because he couldn't handle Vanessa's furious glare burning into him. But then, after a long, suffocating silence, he spoke. "Claire is going to college." I could feel Vanessa's rage simmering beneath the surface, but she didn't say anything. She couldn't. I had won. The day I received my acceptance letter from a university in New York, I sat alone in my room, staring at the envelope, not knowing whether to cry or smile. I had done it. I was getting out of here. But as I packed my suitcase, I couldn't shake the bitter feeling in my chest. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to feel relieved. But all I felt was a strange emptiness. Dad helped me load my luggage into the trunk the day I left. Vanessa didn't even bother saying goodbye. I didn't care. But right before I got into my car, Dad pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm proud of you, Claire," he said, his voice hoarse. "Your mother would be too." I wanted to believe that, I really did. But when I looked at him, all I saw was a man who had lost himself a long time ago. And as I drove away from that house, I made myself a promise. I would never come back. I used to think that once I left that house, I would immediately feel free. But the truth wasn't that simple. The first few days in New York were both exciting and lonely. The city was too big, too loud, and I didn't know anyone. I threw myself into my studies, trying to adapt to my new life. No one here knew about my past, about Vanessa or my father, and I liked it that way. I rarely went home. No one in my family really expected me to. Dad barely called, and whenever I tried to reach out, Vanessa was always the one to answer. She still had that same sickeningly sweet tone, but I wasn't naive enough to believe it anymore. Every conversation ended in quiet tension. Eventually, I stopped trying. Dad and Vanessa didn't come to my college graduation. I waited until the last minute, even saving 2 seats for them in the audience. But they remained empty. Instead, on the morning of my graduation, a short text appeared on my phone. "Congratulations, Claire, I'm proud of you." That was it. No call, no apology. I wasn't sure if I felt disappointed. Because maybe, deep down, I had stopped expecting anything from Dad a long time ago. But even though they weren't there, I wasn't alone that day. My grandmother, my mother's mother, sat in the front row, clapping proudly as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. She was the one person who had never abandoned me. After the ceremony, as we had dinner at a small cozy restaurant, she took my hand, her eyes filled with warmth. "Your mother always believed you could do it, Claire, and so do I." I tried not to cry, but in that moment, I realized, this was my family, not the people who had cast me aside. After graduation, I decided to stay in New York. I didn't want to return to my hometown. I didn't want to face Vanessa, to see the house that used to be mine but no longer belonged to me. I wanted to build a life of my own. I found my passion in media and advertising, a world where I could use both creativity and strategy to create something meaningful. I worked hard, climbing my way up from an intern to a stable position at a well-known advertising agency. Life fell into place, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt free. But even as the distance between me and my family grew, there was one thing I could never quite let go of: my little brother. I didn't know much about Ethan, the baby Vanessa had given birth to. When I left, he was only a few months old. I never got the chance to be his sister. Occasionally, when I called Dad, I tried to ask about Ethan. But Dad's responses were always short and dismissive. "He's doing well, he's healthy." Vanessa never let me have a chance to connect with him. Still, I couldn't stop wondering. Did he even know I existed? Had he ever asked about me? Maybe one day, I would have answers. But for now, I had a life to build. And I wasn't going to let the past pull me down one more time. I hadn't heard from Dad in nearly 3 years. My life in New York was stable. I had a good job, a small but cozy apartment, and no one ever mentioned Vanessa or the past I had worked so hard to leave behind. But then, on a Saturday night, my phone rang. Dad's number. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, my hands slightly trembling. Finally, I took a deep breath and answered. "Claire, it's Dad." His voice sounded distant, exhausted, as if he had been carrying something too heavy for far too long. "We just bought a new house," he continued. "I was hoping maybe you could come help with the move. It might be a good chance for us to reconnect." I hesitated. Why now? Why, after all these years, did he suddenly want me to come back? But when he mentioned Ethan, I knew I couldn't say no. "He talks about you all the time, Claire. He wants to meet you." Ethan? He really knows I exist? Maybe this was my only chance to meet my little brother. I agreed. 2 weeks later, I drove back to my hometown. Dad and Vanessa's new house was nothing like the one I had grown up in. It was bigger, fancier, but completely soulless. I stepped inside, anxiety twisting in my stomach. Vanessa greeted me at the door, her fake smile unchanged. "Claire, what a surprise to see you." I glanced around. Ethan wasn't there. "Where's Ethan?" I asked immediately. Vanessa gave a small, amused smile and replied slowly. "Oh, such a shame. We thought moving might be too distracting for him, so we sent him to my parents' house for the weekend." A cold chill ran down my spine. She had done this on purpose. Dad stood there, looking away. He knew. And he hadn't stopped her. I clenched my fists, swallowing the anger rising in my throat. Fine, I'll help with the move then. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. As I walked into the storage room, I saw a sealed cardboard box. On the outside, scrawled in marker, were the words, "Old things, throw away." I opened it, and my heart clenched. No. Photos of my mother. The books she used to read. The necklace she wore every day. All of it had been shoved carelessly into the box, like trash. My hands trembled as I picked up a photo. Mom, holding me as a baby, her face glowing with happiness. I walked into the living room, gripping the picture tightly. I held it up in front of Vanessa. "What is this?" My voice was cold, sharp. She barely glanced at it before shrugging. "Oh, those things don't really fit in the new house anymore. Everything needs to change, Claire. It's only natural." It felt like a knife straight to my heart. "Don't fit?" I repeated, each word slow, controlled, as I fought back the storm of emotions threatening to explode. "This is my mother. This is her life. She is not some old thing to be thrown away." Vanessa chuckled softly, her voice dripping with condescension. "Don't be so dramatic, Claire. The past is the past. Do you really think your father wants to look at these things every day? Seeing them just makes it harder for him to move on. Maybe it's time you forget about your mother." My fingers tightened around the photo until my knuckles turned white. I turned to Dad, hoping, desperately, that he would say something, that he would protest, that he would stand up for me. But he just stood there, silent. I had waited for this moment for so long. For him to realize his mistake. For him to fight for me, for my mother, for everything we once had. But he did nothing. I couldn't take it anymore. Without a word, I turned around, gathering every single one of Mom's belongings and loading them into my car. No one stopped me. No one said a word. As I shut the trunk, I stood there for a long moment, staring at the house that was supposed to be home. Dad stood on the doorstep, his expression filled with hesitation, with guilt. But he didn't move. I had nothing left to say to him. I got into my car and started the engine. But just as I was about to drive away, my eyes drifted to the second-floor window. Ethan. He stood there, his wide blue eyes staring down at me. He knew who I was. He was watching me leave. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't abandon him the way Dad had abandoned me. I had to come back. But not now, not while Vanessa was still in control. I would wait. And one day I would take my little brother with me. I thought that leaving that house for the last time would be the end of it all. But I was wrong. 2 weeks later my phone rang again. I had planned to ignore it, but something inside me still hadn't fully let go. I took a deep breath and answered. "Claire, I need to talk to you." His voice held a hint of hesitation, but then he continued. "Vanessa and I are hosting a housewarming party next week. Family, friends. We want you to come. So people can see that our family is still strong." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me there, for what?" I let out a dry laugh. "To be part of your perfect little show?" Dad sighed. "Claire, you're my daughter. I want you to be part of this family." This family? The one I had been pushed out of? I let out a bitter chuckle, but still agreed. "Fine, Dad. I'll come." But Vanessa always had her own way of manipulating everything. 3 days before the party, I got a text from a relative. "Claire, are you coming to the housewarming party? I heard it's tonight." I froze. Tonight? I immediately called Dad, but he didn't answer. I knew exactly what was happening. Vanessa had changed the date on purpose. She wanted to make sure I wasn't there. So I wouldn't show up. So I couldn't challenge whatever story she planned to tell about me. But she had forgotten one thing. I was no longer a child she could control. I scrolled through my contacts and dialed the number for the high-end restaurant they had ordered catering from. Hello, this is Claire Benson. I'm calling to confirm the catering order for tonight's party. The friendly manager responded. Yes, the Benson family's order. It's scheduled for delivery in 2 hours. I smirked. Actually, there's been a slight change. I'd like to cancel the order. A brief moment of confused silence. Are you sure? The order has already been paid for. Absolutely sure. I hung up, a satisfaction spreading through me. That evening, a relative of mine live-streamed from the party. I sat on my couch, sipping a glass of wine, watching silently. They had set up everything to look like a perfect event. Twinkling lights, elegantly dressed guests. But there was one problem. No food. I chuckled to myself as I watched Vanessa struggle to keep her composure, awkwardly reassuring everyone that the food will be here any minute. But as time passed, unease spread through the crowd. Then suddenly, a voice from off-camera asked, "Where's Claire? I thought she was coming too." I sat up straighter, paying closer attention. Vanessa flashed a soft smile. The same, fake, practiced smile I knew too well. "Oh, Claire," she sighed, shaking her head with an exaggerated look of sympathy. "She's always been like this. She's not very social. She has some emotional issues, so we didn't want to pressure her." She said it so sweetly, so full of pity, as if I were some troubled, wayward child. Her words cut like a knife to my pride. Vanessa had done this on purpose. She wasn't just trying to push me out of the family. She wanted to destroy my image completely. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I dialed my father's number. The phone rang, and as he put it on speaker, the entire party fell silent. "Claire? Why are you calling right now?" I didn't hesitate. "Dad, is the party going well? Or is everyone too busy waiting for the food?" I heard Vanessa's sharp inhale. "Claire, what did you do?" I let out a cold laugh. "Nothing at all. It's just that if I wasn't invited, then the catering order wasn't necessary, right?" Murmurs spread through the room. Vanessa was losing control. "You selfish brat, Claire. You always want to ruin everything for me." "Me?" I repeated slowly. "Thank you for finally showing everyone who you really are." The energy in the room shifted. I saw guests subtly set down their drinks, whispering to each other. Vanessa had made a mistake. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "Dad, I'm exhausted. I've tried so hard to hold on to something that clearly doesn't exist anymore. You chose Vanessa a long time ago. And I'm choosing to walk away from this game." A deafening silence. Vanessa was no longer smiling. And for the first time in years, my father had nothing to say. I took a deep breath. "Goodbye, Dad." And then I ended the call. There was nothing but a deep sense of peace within me. I had cut ties with the past. Vanessa could keep controlling my father, but she would never control me again. 4 months after the housewarming party, my father showed up at my door. I was getting ready to go out when I heard a knock. When I opened it, I froze. Dad stood there. Thinner, older, with a weariness in his eyes that I had never seen before. "Claire." His voice was hoarse, as if he had practiced for a long time just to say my name. I didn't know how to react. 4 months. I hadn't spoken to him in 4 months, no calls, no updates about Vanessa. I thought he would never show up again. But he was standing here, right in front of me. "Can we talk?" I hesitated but finally stepped aside, letting him in. Dad looked around my apartment, as if trying to imagine the life I had built without him. A life where he no longer existed. "Are you doing well?" he asked. His voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "Better than ever," I answered, not bothering to hide my coldness. Dad nodded, then let out a long sigh, as if he was gathering the courage to say something important. "I was wrong." I went completely still. I never expected to hear those words come out of his mouth. "I was wrong to let Vanessa control everything. I was wrong to push you away. I hurt you. And I know that." I clenched my fists, a flood of emotions crashing over me. "Why now?" My voice wavered slightly. Why did it take you this long to realize? Dad looked down at his hands, as if he didn't know the answer himself. Then he said, I lost you. And I don't want to lose Ethan the same way. I took a sharp breath. Ethan. Hearing my little brother's name felt like a knife cutting through an old wound. Where's Vanessa? I asked, half expecting, half dreading the answer. Dad let out a bitter chuckle. She's been cut off by the family. Friends stopped trusting her after what happened at the party. I felt a slight sense of relief. Not because I wanted revenge, but because, finally, the truth had caught up with her. He wants to see you, Dad continued. He asks about you every day. He doesn't understand why you're not there. My chest tightened. For my entire life I had believed I was unwanted, pushed out of the family. But Ethan was different. He had never even had the chance to know me, yet he still wanted to find me. I couldn't say no to that. 3 weeks later, I saw Ethan again. I chose a small cafe in my old town, a place that didn't hold too many painful memories for me. I arrived early, my heart pounding. Then Dad walked in, holding the hand of a little boy. About 8 years old. Ethan. My little brother looked like Dad, but his deep blue eyes belonged to Mom. I felt a lump in my throat. Ethan stared at me for a long moment. Then suddenly, his face broke into the widest smile. Claire. I frowned. I hadn't expected him to call me that. I hadn't expected him to already know who I was. Before I could react, he ran to me and wrapped his arms around me in a tight hug. I never thought I would cry that day. But I did. From that day on, things began to change. Dad and I weren't completely healed, but we started seeing each other more. Ethan became the bridge between us. He told me about school, about his mischief, about the times he had asked about me but never got answers. Dad listened silently, not interrupting. One day, as I was about to leave, Dad suddenly called out to me. Claire. I turned around. Thank you. I nodded. There was nothing else that needed to be said. I returned to New York feeling lighter than I ever had. Vanessa no longer controlled my life. Dad was trying to fix his mistakes. And most importantly, I was no longer alone. Ethan needed me. And I would never abandon him, the way I had been abandoned. For the first time in years, I felt truly strong. I had built a life of my own, a bright future. But I had also found back a part of my family. And that mattered more than anything else. The story of Claire Benson. Claire Benson's journey is not just about escaping control. It's about finding herself again. Once cast aside by her family, she rose above it all, built her own life, and healed from past wounds. But life is not always about cutting ties, it's sometimes about giving second chances. Even after being abandoned by her father, Claire chose to open her heart again. Not for the past, but for the future. For Ethan, the little brother she could never turn her back on. Her story is a reminder that true strength lies in our choices. Whether to walk away, or to go back and make a difference. Claire Benson's story is an emotional journey of pain, resilience, and redemption. What do you think of Claire's decision? If you were in her shoes, would you forgive her father? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.